It's early one Friday morning in the month of April, 30 AD. The city is Jerusalem. There are three guilty men that are getting ready to be let out of the city to be executed for their crimes. One of the men, we know his name, was Barabbas. This is a bad dude. He had led insurrections. He had stirred up riots of people against the authority in the city. People got hurt. People died. I mean, this guy is guilty of murder. He's getting ready to be let out of the city to be executed. But something happens. It's amazing. At the last minute, the Governor Pilate, pulls him out of the lineup and lets him go free. Can you imagine being ready to be let out to be executed, and all of a sudden you're set free? And I'm sure he was breathing in that fresh freedom air on that Friday morning. But in his place, the governor substituted another man, another convicted criminal, and his name was Jesus Christ. All three men are let out of the city. They are put on three crosses, and the execution starts. And the execution for that Friday morning proceeds like normal, people dying. But what's a little sick and sad about this one is that the crowd is more into it this morning. And they actually start mocking the guy in the middle, Jesus Christ. They're mocking him because he claimed to be the Messiah. He claimed to be the king. He claimed to be a savior. And now he's going to die. And so the religious leaders are mocking him, and the soldiers are mocking him. Even the guys on either side, the criminals to the left and the right, they are mocking him as well. The only people not mocking Jesus are his mother standing before him and about 5 or 6 disciples, most of which are women. And so these men are just mocking because they're dying. They don't care. Something changes in the morning with one of the men. And right before noon on that Friday, the three men have a conversation. It started by the man on his left. And the man on his left, the criminal, turns to Jesus and says, "Well, I got an idea. You're supposed to be the Messiah, right? You're supposed to be the great liberator. I got an idea. Why don't you get down off this cross, and why don't you take us with you?" Now, it was sarcastic, it was snide, but you know, there was probably some truth in that. He really knew who Jesus was. He maybe even believed that Jesus was who he said he was, and he was asking him for help. But do you hear the heart? It was a cold heart. It was a prideful heart. It's actually like a lot of people who had followed Jesus during his 3 years. People would say, "Feed me the way I want to be fed, Jesus. Save me the way I want to be saved. Heal me the way I want to be healed." You see, if you come to Jesus and you can say, "I know who you are, and I actually believe you are who you said you were, and I want you to help me, but I want you to save me the way I want to be saved." That shows that you're truly not submissive, you're not surrendered, and you're not ready for a Savior yet. You're trying to save yourself. Well, Jesus doesn't have an opportunity to answer him because quickly the man on the right, the criminal, he responds, and he's had a change of heart. Maybe it's by watching Jesus that morning, how he didn't curse back at people. Maybe it's the way he saw Jesus forgive people. But he is now a repentant criminal. And he says, "Listen, leave this guy alone. He's not done anything wrong. He's a good man. Now us, we deserve to be here." And then he turns to Jesus and he says something really interesting. He says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Now, Jesus could have turned to him and said, "You're joking, right? I mean, you got to be kidding me. You think we got time for a baptism here? I mean, you haven't even heard my sermons. You've lived your whole life. Let me get this right. You've lived your whole life doing what you want to do, sinning it up, having a good time. You've been enjoying your flesh. You've hurt other people. Maybe you've stolen things. You may have even killed other people. And here in the last few hours, when you know it's done, you want me to forgive you and give you entrance into heaven?" Now, what would you have done? What would you have said? Well, Jesus doesn't say that, does he? Jesus looks at him and he says 3 things. He says, I tell you the truth. I'm telling you truth. Today, I will take you away. See, the man had asked a simple question, and he really prayed what we might say is the sinner's prayer. He said, I'm guilty. You're good. I want to go with you. I'm guilty. You're good. Let me go with you. And he said it with a repentant heart. And Jesus said, I'll do that. I'll take you to paradise. It's a word that's used only 3 times in the New Testament, and it talks about God's home, a place where he takes his friends. Now, let me ask you something. Is this fair? Okay, this guy has lived his whole life as a sinner, as a wretch. And you're telling me in the last few moments, God says, all right, let's just look past all that. Let me take you to heaven with me. Is that fair? Let me tell you something. No, it's not fair. But it's grace. That's what grace is. It's giving us with mercy what we do not deserve. Do you think you deserve any more grace or mercy because you've been a good person a lot of your life than this man did? But Jesus offered him salvation. Now, let me say a couple quick things. Do we think that just saying a quick prayer will save you? And I kind of join with the people who say, I don't like the sinner's prayer. You know, there's this, people say there's this one magical prayer in the Bible that if you say the words exactly right, and, you know, if you're kneeling the right way, you know, and it's a full moon and you say everything right, then presto magic, God forgives you. Well, I agree. There's no magic prayer, but you can pray a simple prayer from your surrendered heart to God, and he will save you. Now, one more thing before I move on. This doesn't mean that you can just live your life like the devil and then say, well, at the end of my life, right before I die, I'll take care of things. Because you don't know when you're going to die. Hebrews tells us that today's the day of salvation. You need to come to the Lord today. And so these men died, and Jesus kept his promise. And so let me ask you a question, a couple actual questions. One, are you more like the man on the left or the man on the right? Do you have an attitude toward Jesus? I know him, and I actually want him to help me, but I want him to do it on my terms. Let me give you some words of wisdom. We have a Savior. You're not him. Let him do his job. Surrender your heart and let him save you the way he wants to save you. The second question I'd have is, do you know somebody like the man on the right? Somebody you've just given up on. It's never going to change with them. I've prayed, I've invited them, I've told them, don't stop, because you never know what the grace of God might do when it encounters somebody, even at the end of their life. 3 guilty men Friday morning, heading out to be executed. 3 guilty men died on crosses Friday afternoon. You say, wait a minute, that's not right. 3 guilty men? I know the 2 men were guilty. See, the man on the left, he was guilty, and he died, and he paid for his crimes and his sin. The man on the right was guilty. He died, but he only paid for his crimes because Jesus had paid for his sins. You say 3? Yeah, Jesus was guilty. I thought he was innocent. This is where we know that Jesus became guilty. The Bible tells us that he who knew no sin became sin for us. And folks, that's the greatest encounter of all.